New information on that breaking news out of Gwinnett County after a gunman opened fire inside a business. We have just learned one person has died.
Let's get straight to Joe Henke with the latest from the scene. Joe.
Well, Aisha, that was the most updated information that the victim from the shooting has now been pronounced dead. We're told there also is another victim, but it's a non-shooting injury just related to people running from the scene. That person was injured. Here's a chopper video of the scene a short time ago. You can see the heavy police presence there as police are still investigating the scene right now. They have not released information on that victim. They said they are trying to reach the family of the victim, so they've not said whether it's a man or woman. They've not released an age. Any description of that victim has not been released yet at this time. As far as the shooter, most importantly, we are told that person is still on the run. It is still suspected that the shooter is in the area, but police do not have a lot of information about that person. They do believe this is a targeted shooting, an isolated incident of the person going into a manufacturing facility nearby the video you're seeing from our chopper, and that one person was shot. But as far as the shooter, we're told that they were in all white clothing, either a dress or some sort of flowing top that they were on or wearing. They're also wearing a white mask that covered their whole face. Only their eyes and mouth were exposed, so they do not know the race. They don't know any information, approximate age. Nothing is known about the shooter at this time. They're just asking anyone in the area to be vigilant, call 911. There is residential, manufacturing, and woods in this area, so there's many places this person can be. So they're just asking everyone, if you see something suspicious, call police. That's the latest information we have. We are about a mile from the scene. Further up the road here, there is a police block at the road near Satellite Boulevard. We're going to try to get a little bit closer here, remain at a safe distance, and we'll bring you updates later in this newscast. But right now, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Joe, we will keep those updates coming also on 11alive.com.